Hi there, my name is Kay Moon, and I'm a Western astrologer and Twin Flame channel, and this is the Aries new moon solar eclipse update for the Twin Flame Collective. Eclipse taking place on March 29th at 6:58 a.m. if you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States. Wow, is this an amazing new moon and solar eclipse? I'm telling you, this is going to be one for the books. I broke it all down in the Lightworker Energy Update. This will function as a part two. So if you haven't listened to that, or you normally don't listen to that, you just listen to this, I strongly encourage you to have a listen to that, especially if you're someone who loves a divine feminine, identifies as a divine feminine, is more in the polaric energy of the connection. You don't really connect to your inner divine masculinity, but mostly your inner divine femininity. Juno is playing a starring role and during this eclipse, and she's our divine feminine energy. And there's a lot that I said that will be basically pertinent for you, and I'm not going to repeat it all here because it would just take way too long. So, let me just give you the quick recap on this particular eclipse, and then we'll get into what's happening for each of the energetic fields, divine masculine and divine feminine. Here is our solar eclipse. We see an opposition to the shaman's asteroid. As I mentioned, we see a sextile to Jupiter. We see a square to Pholus, and we also see a sextile to Pluto, as well as a trine to Juno, the divine feminine energy. All together, this is really talking about coming into our own. It's very much a coming of age saga or story, if you will, when we look at this energy where this is a personal pivot point and we get some strong personalized lessons and experiences and invitations to step into greater personal accountability and power when it comes to the way we're showing up in connection and communication, romantically, professionally, platonically. This is an invitation to step up in so many ways and an elevation point for many as we step onto new timelines that allow us to connect with people in more authentic, real, grounded ways. Now, don't get me wrong, I spoke about it in the Lightworker Energy Update. You may be seeing the exact opposite of authentic, real, and grounded right now. And there's good reason for that elsewhere in the zodiac. I'm not going to cover that here. But the tension that is facilitated by some of this energy will have some of us taking a spin into some shadow work before we get the opportunity to integrate the shadow and step into the light. And we're going to go deeper into this conversation about shadow here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and take a look at Juno and what's going on with her, our divine feminine energy, as we go into this solar eclipse. She's there retrograde at that first degree of Sagittarius. If you're new here, welcome. I read Juno as the divine feminine because she is the wife of Jupiter. She represents spousehood, partnership, the marital contract. She is the higher octave of Venus, where Venus is that mushy gushy love, connection, chemistry, attraction, desire. Juno takes all of that and formalizes it into official partnership. So here's Juno. And roughly every other year, we see her go retrograde. And I've spoken at length about the Juno retrograde with partners. You can find my words about them on their YouTube channels. Links to all of that is in the post section of the community on YouTube. But just as a quick recap here, she's retrograde now. She'll remain retrograde through May. And then she turns direct, but she remains in Scorpio. She's going to spend a lot of time in the sign of Scorpio this year. She doesn't come out of Scorpio until October, beginning of October. This is a very significant moment and a pivotal change point anchored between two very potent and palpable union windows. 2023, where the divine counterparts met up in the sign of Aries, the sign of the individual, and 2029, when they are going to meet up in the sign of partnership, that will be Libra and collaboration. There's so much change unfolding for both counterparts, and 2025 is the midpoint year between those two. And what we are seeing Juno and Jupiter do this year is, and the way we choose to respond to the energy that they kick off for us, is really going to be indicative of whether or not there's more space for union in your personal life stream or not. So let's dig in because there's a lot of growth here. Juno at that first degree of Sagittarius, she's beginning her retrograde in the sign of truth, faith, hope, and optimism. Unless you've got something in place this year to help you stay optimistic, stay in faith about your connection, like a community or a coach, or something that's focused on manifestation and creation of the next level of your connection, whether you're in union or separation, this is where you may run into some hopelessness as you feel forced to look at the 3D circumstances and submit to what they're showing you about your situation. Sagittarius is known for its need to be, quote, realistic while also striving for the higher octave. Scorpio as well. Scorpio is actually known to be more pessimistic, where Sagittarius can be most of the time optimistic, if not realistic. They're optimistic. It's the opposite for Scorpio. They run the gamut from realistic to pessimistic. And with Juno anchoring into Scorpio and settling in here for a nice long retrograde, it's going to be very easy to fall into the trap of seeing things in your connection as glass half empty. This is where you may run into some hopelessness as you feel forced, as I said, to look at your third dimensional circumstances. You could be doing a lot of review. That's what retrogrades are for, of what's happened, what's not happened in your connection, taking stock of where you are now and how it's unfolded up to now. It will be very helpful as we move into the fullness of Juno retrograde to have support for your connection and its potential as we close out a lot of old energy, put an end to a lot of old energy, and purge a lot of old energy. And the reason I say there's a lot of closure here is because Scorpios are a sign of endings and completions. And Scorpio also deals with our shadow and our shadow emotions and energy. And so this year is an invitation into a lot of shadow work as well for the divine feminine energetic field. Okay. Without that added support for your faith, your hope, your optimism, your belief in union, in love, in connection, without that added support, it can be very easy to make challenging situations worse. Like I said, to see the glass half empty instead of growing through the challenge between now and when Juno gets back into Sagittarius, our sign that deals with faith, hope, and optimism in October of this year. And that, for those of you that do want union, that's the last thing you want to do is make a challenging situation worse, right? Now, because this energy is trying the eclipse, here's our eclipse. Juno's trying the eclipse. She's also trying to Venus, who's retrograde, Neptune, and Mercury, also retrograde. And she's trying to Mars here as well. My goodness, she's got a lot going on. And she is sextile to Pluto. There's some intensity here, and I broke down what that intensity is, why it is, and how it plays out in the shadow and the light in the light worker energy update. I'm not going to duplicate here what I said there, but everything I said there applies to the divine feminine energy fields, especially. Now, what what will make all of what I said there even more chaotic for the divine feminine energy fields is the way she is standing in opposition to Uranus as she steps into this retrograde. This will add to the energies I laid out in that update, a sense of quick movement, overnight changes, and about faces, things you didn't see coming, the element of the unexpected and the unpredictable, and quantum leaps. Now, to our human mind, this can be perceived as chaos. But in the spiritual realms, this is the opportunity for timeline jumping if we can appropriately integrate the shadow side of desire, which can manifest as desperation and lack energies. Now, if we can integrate that, it's going to be very easy to get into some timeline jumping, very easy to quantum leap here. Now, this is going to be a key lesson in the divine feminine energy fields as we move through this retrograde and especially at this eclipse to deal with between now and October, as I mentioned, when she comes out of her retrograde and post retrograde shadow. The shadow side of desire, like I mentioned, that desperation and lack can show themselves and show themselves in some very personal ways. And so, really paying attention to like, where is that showing up for me personally? How am I experiencing that or caught up in that narrative or in victim consciousness about my connection? This is your opportunity to finally confront that shadow, integrate it so it's no longer standing in between you and union as we move toward the union window in 2029. Expect circumstances at this new moon solar eclipse to put you in touch with the energies I just mentioned. Now, here's the thing. I'm talking about lack and desperation. It's the shadow side of desire, right? But what they're actually showing us, the shadow energy, isn't lack. What it's showing us is where we've created separation in order to be in agreement and solidarity with something else. So here's some examples. I know it's a complex construct, but I'm gonna break it down. Here's an example. We can create separation from wealth in order to have solidarity with our family who hold the agreement that lust for money is the root of all evil. We can create separation from love to have solidarity with never having our heart broken because we refuse to get too close. We can create separation from health to have solidarity with needing to be taken care of because that's the only time people ever paid attention to or loved us in our early childhood programming. You get the idea. The issue here is to face the shadow side of the desire and integrate it by understanding its true message and its indirect way of getting something else we desire just as much, if not more, than our conscious desire. So many people will say, I want union, I want union, I want union. But then the opportunities to participate in connection show themselves, and all they can look at their counterpart through is the lens of the past. And it's like, I'd rather stay attached to my lens of who they've been all this time so that I don't get suddenly hurt than put that lens down and take the chance to see how they and I can be new again. Okay. Like I said, you guys get the idea. The ongoing process through the first week of October of this year is this, and we've really just begun. Now, the faster we're able to face the depths of some of these truths and the shadow side of desire within ourselves, the faster we're going to create ease and step into the light as we navigate this transit. And that's going to help it feel less intense and heavy. So, all my fellow shadow work practitioner friends, I know you're out there. I know you listen. It is time. Roll up those sleeves, set up your grounding and protection, launch those retreats, get those courses and workshops out there, open up those private sessions, as this is a time when the collective will need your ability to hold a container for transformation and be a way shower of integration. Okay. And since we all have inner divine feminine energy, especially those of you who work with men, you too are going to be very needed now, as men can have not only a feminine side or hold feminine energy, but they can also have a feminine side that can operate in shadow for so many reasons. Some men needed to stay in an infantilized state in order to sustain any connection to mom, their first female attachment figure, because she never allowed connection with her as he grew into his masculinity unless he performed and stayed as her little boy. And this bred a shadow feminine side in him. Some men had neither parent comfortable with their feminine energy, and it was repressed or rejected in their formative years, so it went into shadow energy. Some men, their feminine expression was repressed and rejected by the collective narrative about masculinity, or the inverse. They were never allowed to operate in their masculinity for reasons not that I just listed, other reasons. So the only way they could express their personal power was through an overexertion of feminine energy that then tipped into shadow. And some men just simply gravitated to a group of petty mean girls at some point in life and adopted their behaviors, thinking it was funny, cute, and cool, not realizing how deeply shadow feminine energy cuts us off from connection. There's so many reasons why both women and men can find themselves in shadow feminine energy. People, period, can find themselves in shadow feminine energy. These are just like off the top of my head examples of how I've seen it happen personally, and they certainly don't apply to everyone, so don't take it diagnostically. I've just shared them to help broaden understanding and awareness in the intention of evoking compassion. People, including men, can go through some pretty messed up stuff. And that messed up stuff, staying unresolved, can be at the heart of why they do what they do, why you see what you see as you interact with them, why there's repressed or shadow side feminine energy showing itself. And this Juno retrograde is going to help us resolve that. My ultimate point is, it's critical not to leave men out of the transformative transit of Juno retrograde in Scorpio that's working overtime to help us become whole in a time where the structures of society are inviting us to ignore basic human rights and needs and act in inhumane ways towards ourselves and our fellow humans. If we want to end what has come to be known as toxic masculinity, we have to recognize men's feminine energy and support them in bringing it into wholeness. Just as women has fought to have society recognize their innate masculine energy and expression, we gotta let men have that moment too, have that growth as well. Now, collectively, we're gonna all work through shadow feminine energies as Juno heads back into Scorpio, the sign that deals with our shadow and personal power, until that first week of October. The jump off point of this retrograde with Juno in Sagittarius, Sagittarius being a masculine sign, is why I've made a special effort to include those who identify as men in this conversation. We all have our personal blend, always in play, sometimes in light, sometimes in shadow. Now, if you need a reading or support, the relationship readings are now open with space available in early April to help you make sense of these energies and how to work with them in your life. What is the focus going to be for you in this Juno retrograde? Now, I've talked a lot about this leading up to it, both with partners on their YouTube channels, but also here. There's so many different things you could be guided to focus on, but your chart is the blueprint of your life that you and God decided before you incarnated. This is what life is going to look like for me. And if you get stuck or confused and you're or overwhelmed, there's like so many things to focus on. Your chart will show us this is where your attention needs to be to get the most out of this particular transit. So you can book with me over at kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video. Relationship readings are open. If you want to take a look at how this is going to work for yourself and your counterparts, you just have a better idea of the mirroring and the balancing that's going on. You can book one of those. And if you are in a relationship that you would consider in union, if you and your counterpart want to come together, can certainly break this down for both of you to hear and understand one another with greater compassion and ease as we move through this energy. Okay. This can be especially helpful, as I mentioned, it feels like a confusing time or it's all coming at you. You just don't know where to start. Now, for those of you who identify in some format of union, this Juno retrograde is really going to ask both partners to integrate at the next level any format of shadow energies that have shown themselves between the two of you and have been a stuck point in the way you interact, grow, and relate. Now, because Scorpio deals with money, money may come up between the two of you. Because Scorpio deals with sex and sexuality, that may come up between the two of you. Certainly, if there's any trauma or pain in your backgrounds, we know both men and women can go through trauma and pain in this arena. This may come up because Scorpio also deals with power, control, and fear. Issues surrounding power, control, and fear, whether it be with work or with family or with one another, can show up for the two of you to need to do some deeper work around. Where it's appropriate, I strongly encourage you to not force yourselves to do it alone. Find that couples coach or couples counselor. I know Lee and Sherry, Relationship Reinvented, they're here on YouTube. They can work with couples. I offer the relationship reading for couples. The two of you can do something like the personal development school together. If there's been any codependency and attachment related stuff that's been a challenge, the world of AlisonArmstrong.com. She's an extraordinary resource for couples who want to step out of shadow in their interpersonal relating and into light and really step into way showership as you step into a new paradigm for relating. Also, the Gottman Institute, Gottman, they're the creators of the 7 principles for making marriage work. You'll find that there's resources everywhere. If you are stuck as a couple, get support. This does not have to be a hard time. It can instead be a transformative and growing time. If you need financial support, talk to an accountant. There are many accountants out there that do work with couples to help them get their finances under control or grow their wealth. Juno in Scorpio retrograde is the right time to do any of this work, especially if you're repeating breakdowns. It's starting to become toxic because the conversation loops and circles. It doesn't evolve. Rather than break up, get help. Like it's a great time to get help and start to see yourself and your counterpart in new ways. Okay. For those of you who identify in some format of separation, this is where in the Juno retrograde, and I mentioned this because Juno was preparing to go retrograde at the Virgo full moon solar eclipse 2 weeks ago. This is where you may find that in separation, uh, there's just a diminishment of some of the intensity and the glue of connection. And so you just don't feel as interested, as piqued, as drawn, as chemically intense. And that's a good thing. These periods of Juno retrograde that create this sense of less intensity in the pull gives each person an opportunity to focus on where can I grow to clear the decks, make space for the union. Because as you know, when the pull is really strong, and it does get really strong during union windows, it can feel like you can't focus on anything else. You can't do anything else. Like you're just wound up in the connection, even if the person's not there. So if there is this diminished sense of presence, that doesn't mean the connection is over. It means that you are in a place of sequestering and consecration so that you can begin to work on what you need to work on for the connection to deepen and expand once we come out of Juno retrograde. Now, others of you in separation may find that, again, those themes that I mentioned that Scorpio represents, these things start to really show up, and it's time to really confront them at the next level of consciousness for wherever you happen to be. You may have worked on finances in the past. Time to step it up. You cleared out debt, time to step into wealth building. You may have worked on trauma in the past, sexual trauma in the past. Now it's time to step it up and time to embrace holistic and healthy sexuality for yourself. You may have worked on shadow work on certain things in the past. Now it's time to step it up. Really move into shadow work in other areas that maybe you haven't focused on. You see what I'm saying? Like you're just going to the next level in this based on your new level of consciousness that has emerged post the last union window and with this new moon solar eclipse. Okay. Now, speaking of the divine masculine, let's go into the DM energy fields and see what's going on. We see Jupiter here in Gemini in trine to Shaman's asteroid Makemake there. And this is going to open up integrating lessons in partnership that have been long overdue and needed to take a step forward. We also see a square to Ceres and Nessus in Pisces. This is going to be a near interior obsession with making needed corrections to our life streams. And for some, this is going to be about closures so that change can happen. Releasing, cutting off, ending a season so that there is space for something new, something different in the world of relationship and connection. Oh, or just personally, you may have some personal goals, personal things you want to attend to, and for whatever reason, the structure of your relationship did not support your dreams. And so you need to step out of the connection so that you can step into becoming. That is certainly an energy that I see here. We also see sextile to the new moon solar eclipse right here for Jupiter and Gemini. This is going to open up turning over a completely new leaf in the divine masculine energy fields. Now, I have mentioned this, in years prior, that when I see the new moon in Aries, Aries being that first masculine sign of the zodiac, I do consider the Aries new moon happens once a year to be the divine masculine's new moon annually. And it showcases what the next turn around the sun will bring into our divine masculine energy fields. As such, it's extraordinarily encouraging to see so much focus on connection to self, authentic connection to self, authentic, real becoming here for self in the divine masculine energy fields, because that's only going to enrich what can happen in partnership, in union. Okay. Uh, Gemini is a very social sign, and Libra is a sign that deals with relationships with others. Aries is our sign that deals with our relationship to self. Pisces is our sign that deals with our spirituality. And so, with occupation in all four of these signs, and Jupiter here holding it in Gemini, this is really going to infuse our DM energy with a step up and some greater recognition. Who are we becoming in relationships? Who do we want to be in relationships? What do relationships even mean to us? Where do we want to go in relationships? Which relationships do we want to solidify in our next chapter? And really starting to take a look at programming and paradigms for relationships that we may have inherited from other people, we're ready to let go of and step into our own definition and kind of structure for relationships. It's also going to help us create growth in our communication and relationships. And so, all of this has been in the realm of unpacking, processing, and digesting for our divine masculine energy field since the middle of 2024. And especially as we crossed over into 2025 when Jupiter was retrograde in Gemini, much of this has been creating a lightness and a levity in our divine masculine energy fields where there's a new consciousness coming online and an ability to think and perceive connections in a brand new way, explore new ideas and connection, experiment with communicating and thinking in completely new ways. Huge gift here, because where the collective consciousness left off with the Me Too movement, the divine masculine collective consciousness has picked up with, okay, so we know what does not work. Let's explore paradigms for relating to ourselves and feminine energy in ways that do work. So there's a lot of awakening energy here in the divine masculine energy fields. In many cases, I have been hearing from people who have believed their person was a runner or so-called runner, that that person is starting to communicate in new ways, opening up more, coming around more, seeing what can be possible in the connection. Is it perfect? No. Gemini energy is mutable. So you get to see a little bit of the old season as you move into the new season. It's the sign of both and the twins. So it's not fully singularized or solidified yet. But how we are responding to this newness, both within ourselves and from our person, this is going to make a huge difference in what solidifies, sticks, and stays. Now, I know it's not easy when you're getting to see some new things, but the old patterns are still there, to not move into shadow energy and give up on yourself. I'll never change. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm a failure in this area of life, or move into shadow energy and cling and feel desperate for change if you're dealing with shadow energy of another person, and lose hope or wall off because it's not permanent yet, or chastise and criticize because it's not perfect, etc. It's very challenging for our emotions and the human mind to stay present and connected in the midst of a season of high change, especially one that's prolonged. Like, do I put on the sweater and the coat, or do I wear the swimsuit and the sunglasses? I can't tell what season I'm in with you or with myself. But as Jupiter is making its way toward cardinal sign Cancer, cardinal signs again are new beginnings, and Jupiter will be here mid year. There is a new beginning coming where the shifts that have happened in the mind, Gemini, will show themselves in congruent connection with the emotions, Cancer. And that's coming in June when Jupiter moves into Cancer for a 1 year stay. Hooray! So if you know you have been triggered by mutable energetic movement as Jupiter has been in Gemini, which can look a lot like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Net effect, 1 step forward. And that's how mutable signs move. A little bit of the old season, a little bit of the new season, a little less of the old season, back to the new season as seasons change signs. Gemini season is a mutable season, it's a mutable sign. This is the time to check yourself and your own relationship to evolution and growth because it is a non-linear process. It's also the time in your own divine masculine energy to not give up on yourself where you're making change, but seeing yourself, backslide or halfway there, not where you want to be yet. It's like babies learning to walk, right? Like when a baby's learning how to walk, we see them stand up and then fall down and crawl a little bit more, and then stand up and they're able to walk further before they fall down and then crawl a little bit more, and then they stand up again. It's this process that's a little bit back and forth, but it's headed in a singular direction. So, for those who feel like they have been in some state of in between union and separation, this is what I'm seeing coming forward for you with your counterpart. More solidification, more head and heart congruence, which will ultimately produce communication and congruence as well. But again, your response to your own growth and to their own growth and learning how to use the wobbly new Bambi legs, it's going to make a huge difference in how the beginning of the next chapter looks. It's going to be imperative to be responsible and accountable for your triggers and managing them effectively, productively, constructively, and not taking being triggered out on yourself and giving up, not making the other person responsible for your feelings. Because just like you, they've been in a deep process of growth and it's not easy for them either. Now, before y'all get in my comments and light me up, let me clarify some things. This does not mean don't communicate or share or have needed conversations. It just means don't let their wobbliness as they move into the next chapter be a reason you don't operate at the level of love your heart has been called to. Releasing tit for tat and expectations that newborns can suddenly just begin to walk. They walk the first time. Why aren't you doing it again? Why are you on your knees again? Get up. Like, we wouldn't treat a baby learning something new that way. Don't treat your newness that way either, or their newness. Let them learn, let them practice, stay present, stay connected. Now, in particular, there are some of you here and subscribed, and I've met with you privately. We've worked together for some time. So I'm seeing this pattern begin to emerge, and I want to share it with you. Because I see this expanding and kind of rippling through the collective. There are some of you who are in that sort of in-between energy where your steadfastness and your consistency in acting in accordance with the love you've felt for years, when other romantic partners to your person could not do it, would not do it, and will never be able to do it, this steadfastness and consistency in acting in accordance with the love you have felt, this is what's calling your person into a state of deeper reflection about why and how they show up in love and connection through this Jupiter and Gemini period, where others act out, lash out, shut down, or punish. The fact that you've been able to operate in love's steadfastness, not because it's been a mental game, but just because your heart has compelled you. You couldn't do otherwise if you tried. This has been the first time that your person has had the chance to look and see, oh, wait a minute, I'm the problem here. Let me get to the bottom of why I treat love this way and handle things better. Because everyone else's behavior in response to their triggers, their wounds, their running, whatever, or their growth process has been to act out, lash out, shut down, and punish. All the other people responded in that way. It gave them a reason to not look at themselves and instead point the finger and blame. I knew he was crazy. I knew she was nuts. This is why I was right to act the way I acted because they're the problem, not me. Your inability to be the problem because love would not let you, your inability to run or cut them off or shut down, it's been a foundation for revelation and a catalyst to confront their shadow in relationships because they have to. Your steadiness only puts a spotlight on where they need to grow. Okay. But with everyone else, they weren't steady enough either. And so their finger pointing, blaming, etc., it just created an option to not have to look in the mirror. But with you, they have to. Now, again, let me clear some things up before y'all get in my comments and act up. This isn't about being so perfect and good that they just suddenly want to treat you right. It's not about you not having boundaries or being a doormat or a simp. That's not what I'm saying. Many of you have had to navigate and figure out how to keep the door open with strong boundaries. And I commend and applaud you because that is hard work on our emotions and mind when all you want to do is let someone in all the way and they aren't even safe for themselves. What I'm talking about here is the supernatural, creative power that love has to generate change. Okay. So, with this eclipse, we continue in the divine masculine energy fields with the exploration of the question, how can I be new in relationships? What can I do differently in relationships? How can I elevate and evolve? And are there things that I need to do for me so that I can be safe in relationships for me before I can do anything for anyone else? Now, for those of you in some kind of union, this is where you'll both be in the process of exploring. How can we be new in our connection? What can we do differently? How can we elevate and evolve? I've been seeing many of you who are in union, you're having deep talks, new levels of communication, revealing things that have never been shared before, parts of yourself that you kept hidden. Thank you. Eclipse in Aries, sign of the self, revealing the self. It's all part of this eclipse as we've come into this year. Okay. You may have kept those things hidden in the past intentionally or because they were repressed. They're starting to come out the closer we've gotten to this eclipse. So remember, this energy might have taken hold as we came into the year, starting at the end of January, beginning of February. The intimacy and communication here is something I encourage you to take advantage of. And if you're not seeing it from another, use this energy. You have divine masculine energy too. Use this energy to initiate it in yourself. You're going to be surprised at the response you get. Now, because divine masculine energy is down here in Gemini, as I mentioned, I have to acknowledge there are some shadow sides of Gemini that can show up as we move through this. Gossip, like things you've shared with one person, getting around to others, double mindedness and double speak and indecision. I want him, I don't. She's the perfect person for me. She's not. She's everything I've ever wanted in a woman. She's the devil, right? This sort of thing. A lack of clarity about the desires of your heart, especially as Jupiter has squared Neptune twice so far, and there's one more square left. There can be a lot of confusion about what you actually want in this process. And it will happen one more time at mid-year as Jupiter moves into Cancer. We'll get one more square to Neptune. Okay. But that lack of clarity about the desires of the heart can lead to back and forth internal mental processes, and that will ultimately lead to back and forth action. So you may have seen a lot of that. The shadow side of Gemini includes superficiality, emotional obtuseness, an unwillingness to connect at the emotional level. Again, that's going to start to resolve as Jupiter gets into emotional water sign Cancer for a whole year. And lastly, shadow side of Gemini includes love triangles. Look, this isn't to beat up on Gemini. Every sign has its light, its neutrality, and its shadow. But I want you to know what the shadow is so that you can choose to get out of it if you catch yourself in it. That light of Gemini, communication, curiosity, exploration, revealing, experimentation, trying things out, not being stuck, being flexible. You can choose to do those things in the face of the shadow showing itself. Okay. Now, if you've got questions, let's talk it out. Your chart is going to hold the guidance that you need. This is just general guidance for the collective. Relationship readings are open. I can look at your chart, their chart, the chart of the union to track the primary growth lessons and cycles of the present moment and how you can make the most of it. Now, for those of you navigating this tricky time in partnership, if you want to book that 90-minute couples reading, it's kind of like a couples massage. You'll get the opportunity to hear about how you can break through your most difficult stuck points, what your counterpart can do as well, and use this energy in your individual divine masculine and divine feminine fields to support not just your own goals, but your goals as a couple. Now's the time to book, kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video, and I will talk to you in April. Can't wait. Thanks so much for liking, subscribing, and sharing, and we will reconnect very soon. Bye for now.